everybody. Welcome back to another Lean in Olympia. I'm Meg Martin, Executive Director of Interfaith Works. And Lean in Olympia is our show that covers topics at the intersection of faith, humanity, belief, social justice issues. Thank you so much for joining us again today. Make sure that if you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, Interfaith Works Thurston County, and we are now in podcast form on Spotify. So if you are out and about in this lovely weather, gardening, doing whatever, you can pop on a podcast and get caught up on all of our community's best and brightest minds and the issues that we've got facing us today. So today I am continuing my series that got started last month when we had Teal from the crew team here, but this series is an effort at getting more understanding in the community about what the city is doing regarding homelessness and affordable housing response. So today I am very happy to be joined by Darian Lightfoot. I just asked you your title and immediately forgot it. Director of Affordable Housing and Homeless Response.
Great, amazing.
Yes, for City of Olympia. So Darian, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks, Meg.
My hope today in our conversation is just to kind of get a broader picture for the community members who might not be in the weeds about city processes and what's going on for city council and all of that. Just what is... I'm like, what is the city doing about homelessness? It's very broad. Yeah. But can you just talk a little bit about... Maybe let's start with your role at the city and a little bit about the structure of your team.
Great.
Okay.
So the Director of Housing and Homeless Response, we have a homeless response team who is in encampments responding to our Q alert system. So any resident who reports an issue to the city about an encampment, an RV, trash, etc., it's all directed to our team. And then each morning they kind of set priorities on encampments to go to visit, on waste to tip, on Q alerts to respond to. And then that's their day. Debrief at the end of the day, what they were able to get done, cases they were able to close out, placements through coordinated entry they were able to connect to, and then start all over again the next day. So urgent response, responding to community needs, supporting encampments, connecting to tiny home villages. So really on the ground homeless response. And I see more as a logistical support, not direct case management for residents, not like a hands-off figure it out service provider, but just connecting, driving folks to appointments or just being that logistical support for an unhoused community and a resource for providers too to help improve the system. Cool. And then we have 3 folks on the housing side, and one is dedicated to federal grants management, applying for more grants, managing the funds that we have come through the federal government. One is for policy, renter protections, affordable housing, home ownership opportunities, landlord registry, more policy and regulations. And then another person is strictly for affordable housing development, connecting with developers, looking at land banking, going through all the state and federal funding processes. So they all have their niche to address housing exclusively. So our team of 8 is able to kind of pair off, but really come together when we see opportunities for overlap.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I feel like I just learned a lot too, even though we work together all the time. Yeah. So you all are embedded in the planning department. Is that still is that kind of the city department that you fall into, or are you sort of like your own entity?
We're kind of our own. We're under the Office of Community Vitality.
Okay.
A dear made-up name by our friend Keith Staley. But it kind of, pictures it's like people community focused. So in our Office of Community Vitality, there's housing and homeless response, economic development, community courts, and planning.
Okay.
So in climate, I'm sorry. So our 5 sections are all under the Office of Community Vitality. And so planning and us are cousins. We're not in the same department, but we work closely together under this larger office.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so can you talk a little bit about, I think something that the community doesn't necessarily understand, like, not to go too far down a rabbit hole, but when I first started advocating at the city for issues around housing and homelessness, I really started to ramp that up in 2012, kind of end of 2011 and 2012. And at that time, one of our asks was for the city to dedicate actual city resources to homeless response, because at that time the message that we consistently got from the city council when we would come to advocate was go to the county, go to the county, go to the county. This is a county issue. This is the county is the jurisdiction that's mandated to deal with this. That's where the money from the state goes. And so it was very much a like, this is a county thing and cities don't have the resources for it. And I think that that was all true, but I guess at what point did the city start putting resources towards homelessness and housing officially?
So, yeah. But we're doing a comp plan update right now, the 2024-25 comp plan update, and we're looking at what the comp plan has said, the comprehensive plan has said about housing, about planning, and it says like a line in the comp plan that housing will be addressed by the market. So, I mean, it is not our role to address anything housing related in our comprehensive plan. And I just read that and thought, wow, how fascinating that we're here today. And we see that is not the case.
Yeah.
And the market is what is driving the inequities and the housing insecurity. So we have to work to hypercorrect it and get it on a path to best serve our community. So in 2018, the first homeless response coordinator was hired, and that wasn't even through city resources. That was a grant from outside support. So it was still teetering on this city investment even in 2018. And then once the home fund passed, there was a dedicated revenue that generated about $2.5 million. But that requirement said a certain amount must go towards housing, brick and mortar development, and another percentage towards homeless response. And so that provided a dedicated revenue source that allowed the city to have some sort of operations. And I think when that became in the city's purview that we can use these funds to address these issues, then it was like, oh, wow, there is an impact when we put money to an issue. We were seeing tensions lessen and being able to have these resources to provide hygiene services or waste removal or to support the shelters, support a tiny home village through this funding. And then we started to see the system start to work a bit with the city's involvement. Or like, okay, we can tangibly see what's happening when we see, millions of dollars of our revenue go into this. And I think that was a toe in the water. And then the advocacy continued from providers to say, this is great, but we need to see more. We need to see policy change. We need to see renter protections. And we need to see a more robust tiny home village support, after the mitigation site downtown and what that looked like and how it morphed and what was learned from the city on why, setting it up this way isn't appropriate and why we need to move to something that's more comprehensive and robust like Quinn Street Village. So I think it was just like try, learn from mistake, try better, learn from mistake, and then just continued messaging from service providers on what needs to happen and what it should look like.
So I want to just pause there for a second and I'm look to the community and to say what we just heard is that it wasn't until 2018 that there was any kind of formal structure at the city for addressing these issues. And then you weren't there yet, but the team had only because didn't it start also, the first revenue from the home fund, correct me if I'm wrong, was in the fall of 2018?
Yes. Yeah.
So then we had 1 year and a couple of months Wait, is that right?
Yep, the pandemic.
And then the pandemic happened.
Yep.
And so it's like, I think that I hear so much in the community, like, no one's even doing anything, or what's even happening, and it's like, for those of us that are really embedded in the work, there's so much happening all the time. Like, everybody is stretched to the absolute gills of their capacity. But it's really important, I think, for the community to understand what like how early we are in any kind of formal, structured, resourced city response.
Totally.
For homelessness and housing. And in the meantime, we've been part of a global pandemic that has only further highlighted the need in our community.
Totally. Yes. And it is a national crisis. Like the City of Olympia can continue to chip away at these issues. And it is just so pervasive. These really deep housing inequities are happening in every county that's neighboring us. And so we can continue to chip away, but like to stay reflective in what we can control and continue to serve our community and the issues that come up, like that's important. And I think, it's been very short, but I think that showing from one staff member 5 years ago to 9 now, like it shows the city now cannot continue to say county's responsibility. Oh, the market will fix the housing issue. That is the furthest thing from the case. So.
Yeah. And not to put anyone on blast, but I'm like, to provide some greater context, the county does have an affordable housing and homeless response, well, not really a homeless response department exactly, but the funding mechanism. But that's a very small team as well. As five or six staff, something like that. And then City of Lacey is in the process of hiring for their first dedicated staff person, correct?
Yeah, I think they just hired.
They just hired for that. So that's exciting. Yep. And then City of Tumwater is still kind of not in that place. So that, I think, just for the context of our area is really important for people to understand. And that these small teams are dealing with, really huge issues and working to pull together the provider community that's pretty far reaching. And so I guess I just want to say with that, like, I really see all y'all's efforts every day. And I really see like how new it all is still, and the amount that you've been able to accomplish and do in this time period with such a small team is really cool and really amazing. And I know that you get a lot of probably negative feedback a lot, and I just am not part of that choir. So I want to say, of course, I always think that we can do and should do and will do better. But I also think it's really important to not tear each other down. And so I just want to say that.
I'm very, very grateful for that. And it does mean a lot. And we do get a lot of really tough pushback, especially in this tone of, what are you doing? What are you even doing? And when I am afforded the time to talk about what we're doing, more often than not, people come out and say, oh, I had no idea. Thank you. That's great. And so I'm just really happy to be here to be able to talk about it. And because we are doing a lot. Some piece of the portfolio that I'm really proud of that I think goes unseen is affordable housing preservation. Our team has a pretty robust program that connects with low-income people, seniors, people with disabilities that are looking to age in place, and has a grant program to make their home ADA accessible, move their washer and dryer from their basement to the first floor, fix their roof, put safer floors so they're wheelchair accessible, to allow low-income people to age in place, which is homelessness prevention. And it is preserving that low-income housing stock so someone doesn't buy it, flip it, and sell it for something market rate. And that is a piece of the housing continuum that has to churn forward. We can't just spend all of our resources cleaning encampments or addressing complaints from the housed community. We just can't do that, because then the housing won't be built to get people where they need, or the policies won't be addressed to support evictions. And so there's just this large continuum that we have to churn forward, and it makes things slower, but it makes it move in tandem with each other.
Yeah.
But people also, I feel like, ask like the silver bullet to fixing housing, and there just isn't one. I'm curious, unless you have a silver bullet on what you think it is, but I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always going to be that accepting of a mentality that it's not either we put all of our resources into emergency housing response and making it look
Totally
prettier.
Yes.
Or we, put everything towards permanent supportive housing or building affordable housing or new development. It's really, I believe we have to do both in tandem. And so I appreciate that kind of visual of like it moves slower, but it's addressing more needs in a more effective way across the spectrum. And I think that the only thing that I have ever thought of that is like actually what feels like the silver bullet, but it seems so impossible to achieve, is just everyone understanding the issue.
Yep.
And I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but I think that the community dialogue around homelessness and the housing crisis, so quickly splinters into, well, no, it's not actually about housing. It's about addiction. No, it's not actually about housing. It's about crime. No, it's not actually about housing. It's about mental illness.
Yep.
And, the housing crisis in our country, as you know, is so complex that you have to work with all of those things. But I see those as secondary and tertiary to the key piece, which is that it is actually just about housing for people. And when we get off onto those splinters, it only distracts us and moves us further away from any type of real progress.
Yes.
How do you I don't know. I'm like, what are your thoughts on that? Or how do you navigate conversations like that when the splintering starts to happen?
Yeah, I absolutely align with that, and feel that we get a lot of emails from people who basically say, I just don't want to see it. I just don't want to see it. They'll say, move people from here, move people for here. And then we try to walk them through that there just isn't a spot to support people transitioning to a safe place right now. But we're in the process of creating that. And oftentimes the response from the community is like, I don't care. I just don't want to see it anymore.
Yeah.
And so our team has tried to then respond again that says, isn't it so sad to see your neighbors suffering?
Yeah.
Yes, it is really hard to see people in your community suffering and to be in a spot like this. And so I want to interpret it being hard to see as in like really a profound experience. I don't necessarily believe that's the case, but it's like that's what I am asking our team to lead with as like we want to try to infuse empathy into these situations because I think that is the silver bullet. Everyone's seeing that our neighbors are in the lowest times. And in order for us to move the needle at all, we need to find ways for our neighbors to become healthy and thriving and to have hope. And there is a ton of misconceptions, it seems, from the public that reach out about like, it is drugs, it is crime, it is this. And we try to pull it back that we are able to support people with those splinters if we can find them a stable place to reside. So
Yeah.
maybe they are suffering from substance use, or maybe they are resorting to crime because they don't have another way to survive. And we will be able to connect people to resources and to support them if we can find a stable place for them to access hygiene services and not have to, find somewhere to eat every single meal of the day.
Yeah. And I also think that, it's human nature for the most part, I would say. Anyone correct me if you disagree, but I'm like, it's human nature to rise to the expectations that are set. Like there's a lot of childhood development stuff that's like setting higher expectations for a kid who's struggling, and providing them the resources that they need to meet those expectations. They're going to meet those expectations. But just starting to believe that a kid is just a problem kid, or a kid is just, not going to make it, or doesn't want to try, or doesn't have any drive, or whatever, then they're going to rise to that expectation that's set. And I just think about how I was having this conversation with my brother literally 2 days ago, where he was like, you've said this to me probably 500 times, but every time you say it to me, it's like a new time. Where he's like, all of the messy things that I do in my life are hidden behind four walls, or are behind a door that I can close. And he's like, I don't think that people truly understand what it would be like for your entire life, to every aspect of your life, including going to the bathroom, including intimate moments with other people, including fights with other people, including all of the things that are messy in our lives, are on display 24/7 for the entire community to see. And just like the impact that would have psychologically on someone, I'm like, yeah, they're going to commit crimes. Yeah, they're going to steal from people. Yeah, they're going to yell on the street corner. Like, their behavior is actually, anybody's negative behavior in that situation is very explainable. Totally. And it's not that they are a criminal or an addict or a bad person or whatever. It's that they are rising to the expectation that we've set in our community, that it's somehow acceptable for people to live like this.
Totally.
And I guess that I'm grateful that we have people in our city government that understand that. But do you feel like it's understood broadly, this kind of perspective?
No, I don't. We just currently are looking at the One Community Plan and creating a 5-year strategic plan out of the One Community Plan. And to kind of re-engage departments in the city, we went back to all the departments that are on the ground to interface with unhoused folks, or were engaged in the process from the start, to kind of say, all right, here's what the plan said, here's what we've done so far, here are what projects are in the works, and et cetera, et cetera. And, we just still are getting questions on like, my job has changed so much. I came here to do this, and now I have to do this, this, and this. Mm-hmm. And this isn't a part of the job I applied to be. And we heard that again and again from different departments, different folks who are on the ground, on like, I have this niche, I have this technical skill set, and that's what I want to be doing, and that is primarily it. Mm-hmm. And I'm just here to challenge that. I think that how my brain works is as a bureaucrat, but as my heart and mind work, it's just like as a community activist and as a public servant. Mm-hmm. And I feel that if you are going to work for the government, then at first and foremost, you need to be a public servant. And what technical skills come after that, that's a benefit to your team, a benefit to how you're able to serve. But that is what it should be. When our team interviews people, we have about 12 interview questions. 3 are about your technical competency, and the rest are how you show up to serve your community. Because it feels like you can show up and serve, and you can be trained and learn and go to training and develop these skills to match. But like, what does service look like to you? And I am really trying to infuse this in all of the departments to say, are you a public servant? It doesn't matter if you're reading water meters or if you are in finance or if you're in IT. Are you here to best serve your community and be adaptive to the needs, whether a housing crisis or a pandemic or et cetera, et cetera? Are you going to be able to shift, see what service looks like for you in your role and do that, and then apply your technical competency? So I don't think we're there. I hope that with our team, like, this is our rhetoric of public servant. And I hope that leadership is starting to see that need. So I hope it's changing, but we're not there now.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like beautiful. I've never really thought about like the philosophy behind government service in that way. So that's really cool.
Yeah. I think that has been, I mean, it's just like a stuffy, it's government. But I think that if you can find people who want to be public servants and like do it in a way that is genuine and creative, you can, it can be this stuffy place where you have to work within a system that is causing the inequities that you are trying to break. Our team talks about that a lot. Like, we are trying to fix a system within the system. And it's hard, but it's also like emotionally draining. You're like, wow, I am, I see the system and I see what it's causing, and yet here I am. And so reconciling that and saying that you're committed to improve what you are in, I think is, I don't know, it was about to sound hokey, but it's like kind of godly. Like, I am going to be in it and I'm going to work on it. And so I love people in service. I love people that are activists or work for nonprofits because you're opting into a harder life. Like, I'm going to just be surrounded in this thing that I know is causing the mission that I'm behind.
Yeah, totally. I feel like as you're talking, I just keep like, again, to sound hokey, but I just keep being like, how, like, hope is coming to mind, like it really takes a lot of like hope and almost like a commitment to hope. And we, are sometimes like salty activists that have been doing this for a long time and are like, hope can start to feel like a little bit like, live, laugh, love. Like, it's wine o'clock somewhere, kind of like signage, like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but really, like, what does hope mean? And I just am like, if there was like a hope meter right now at the city, where do you feel like it would fall? And how do you all kind of help each other with that?
Yeah, with
like,
our,
like,
I don't want to overshoot, but for our team, our hope meter we're pretty far. I mean, we've built just a really dear culture where we love each other. We tell each other that we love each other, and we joke and we play and we have joy in this really tough environment. And the hype we have for each other is just like, like Anna, who does federal reporting, she'll like submit a report and everyone's like, oh my God, you did it. We don't know. Cool, they don't know what she submitted, but it is just the expectation that you are just like, she is a piece of the bigger picture, and her piece doesn't connect to Outreach's piece, but it's a piece, and we are just like, oh, so behind it. And so for our team, I think that the hope meter is high. I want to feel that way. For the city, again, we are trying to just repeat it again and again, that your role can positively impact the situation. Depending on your mindset, depending on how you speak, you can help change the culture. And I really feel that leadership is getting there. I know that you've connected with leadership in council. I feel like I go to city council and I'm like, I want to do this creative, crazy thing. And they're like, what are you waiting for? And I that's a really cool feeling. And to get that response, and that gives me hope. And I think that our team's energy gives them hope, and then they give other leadership hope. So we're like kind of passing it around, and I see it. I for sure see it. But like, something that is sad, and it'll probably come out soon, but they did the community survey that they do every 2 years about how the community feels about everything: OPD, fire, permitting, code. And housing and homeless response, dead last. 1% of people who took the survey are satisfied with how the city's doing. And that was really hard to see.
Yeah.
It was really hard to see. I think, it was hard. It felt like, wow, we are doing a lot. And it feels, and I don't know, maybe you know, Meg, but I don't know another city who has like kind of committed to not closing an encampment unless housing is connected. But the city kind of informally has. It says we're not shutting an encampment down unless there's housing connected. And that feels good for us. And to still feel the dissatisfaction was just like, all right, well, it seems like we have work to do. We have work to do in serving our community, and I guess we have work to do in telling the story.
Yeah, and work to do in getting the community survey out. I missed that. Whoops. But yeah, I think that I've talked about this, I believe, on here before, but we do this exercise at our job, that I used to do with our staff when we used to have in-person meetings all the time, and now it's kind of moved to Zoom because of the pandemic, but we would do this thing where, I see that compassion fatigue and burnout and those kind of terms often show up a little bit different in each person. There's some elements of it that are the same, but I find it to fall on kind of a spectrum that mirrors, and like, stick with me, mirrors like trauma response. So the primary types of response in trauma, as I'm sure you know, is flight, fight, freeze, and fawn. But most people can identify certain aspects of themselves as, in fight or flight mode. And so when we are at a place, like if you think of the spectrum as like the center of the spectrum is really this zone of like groundedness is what I call it. It's where you're really, your basic needs are being met, your resiliency and self-care practices are on lockdown. You understand what your role is in something. You've got the support that you need. Like you're like, relationship to substances or other things that you do to numb out emotions is like in balance, right? You're like in the zone of groundedness. And then to the left is starting to move away from the zone of groundedness to a place of flight. So a lot of times I see when people are moving towards that, they're like, what's the point? Why should we even try? I'm just going to like ignore this. Boundaries get really kind of like loose and whatever. And then to the other side, it mirrors the fight response where it's like, okay, I'm out of control of this situation, so I'm going to get super rigid. I'm going to have, try to put rules in place that are going to be selectively enforced with some people because they piss me off and not with others because I like them. And it really kind of mirrors also on both ends of the spectrum what happens when people are either perpetrating abuse or being perpetrated or like being victims of abuse. And all this is so long-winded to say, but what I think has happened in our community is that, especially during the pandemic, visibility of homelessness became so stark because the rest of the community went home. And what was left was everybody who was unhoused without resources. The community care center closed. So the hundreds of people per day that were getting inside from there were visible in a whole new way to the broader community. And community members had no framework or support for what that does to a person to bear witness to that every single day. And in our, you have the way that you help your team feel supported by that. I have how I help my team name it, build resiliency practices, get the support that they need to stay into that zone of groundedness. And what I've seen is that the community follows that same spectrum, but doesn't necessarily have the words or the support or whatever to name it for what it is. And so I don't know what that community survey said, but I would imagine that if you read some responses, it would probably fall to either side of the spectrum of like dissatisfaction with the way that the city is responding. Yeah. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. I mean, so many of the emails I get with, I used to be compassionate and now I'm fed up, a lot of these responses, or they start with their political party affiliation and then they want me to know who they are. This tone of this is out of character for me.
Yeah.
But I still need you to know. And it's like I just read sadness. I read a lot of sadness in people. That's what I kind of have to hold. And fear. Just a ton of fear. And I would say that too. People are feeling fear in this, again, fight or flight, and I don't know what to do about my fear. I don't know where to channel it. And so I'm going to send this fear-ridden email to this person I've never met, who I don't have a relationship with. And so I can just kind of pop off, I can say what I want. Or it's they feel badly that they're feeling this way. They have some shame.
Yeah.
And so they need me to know the person they are to their core before they tell me how sad they are about seeing homelessness. So I totally see what you're saying. And it's they maybe were here, but now they're not. And they don't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
And they're what I can do is I can let you know. So, yeah, I see that.
And I feel like that kind of what's the silver bullet? Some of that is in there. I feel I've talked on this show about my own history with substance abuse and, recovery and mental illness and all this stuff. And I feel really grateful for the main lesson in that for me was to make sure that my side of the street is clear before I go thinking, judging, acting, emoting on other people's sides of their own street. And it's I wish that in our community there could be more of that self-work and self-reflection and self-awareness of what is my side of the street here? What even is my side of the street? What is my responsibility in my community? What am I doing to ensure that if the walls and the doors and the roof went away, that my own messiness wouldn't be impacting other people? Is that possible? Is that, I just want for us to be able to have more conversations like that. And it's tough to, that is not going to be possible in our generation or in our lifetime to see a community shift like that. And I just think that there is like a beauty, there is like a nobility, there is like something in choosing to show up to work every day anyway, knowing that we're not going to see that change in our lifetime, probably.
Yes. Yeah. I have, close friends or chosen family that's like, what can I do to be a partner in this work with you? Just kind of sweet ways up to engage. Like, can I volunteer? Can I donate? Can I do this? And I'm like, yes, yes, and yes. But what you really can do is just like engage with people when they say mean things about homeless people. That's like actually what needs to be done. You can say things like, people are suffering and we don't need to degrade people. And this is, things are in place because of really intense housing costs, and people are trying to make things better. Like, you can just say a couple sentences to engage to hopefully diffuse the situation. That's really what my ask to my community or who I surround people by, of like, if you want to kind of play, then that is just an awesome place to start, because everyone says things about encampments or homeless people. And if you can help intervene and just like kind of maybe just like, oh, wow, yeah, that was gross what I said.
Yeah.
Then maybe there would be some of this deep self-reflection. But yeah, I agree. And during our like department roadshow, I had so many people say, well, when do you think this will end? Like, when will we be done with this? When can I go back to my job? When can I go back to what I was doing? When can I go back? And
like not have to worry about the impact that homelessness is having on my job. Yeah.
Yep. Or when will all of this be done? And Pamela Braff, the climate director, says that she gets asked the same thing. Like, when will things will be better and back on track? And those are some really overwhelming questions. Those are like sometimes the harder questions than like the mean attacky ones on like, well, like so many people fall into homelessness every day. If, X, Y, and Z, you're facing all of these things. When is it going to be done? And I'm like, not in my lifetime.
Yeah.
So, and like knowing that is the daunting part. But you just got to show up and do it. You just got to show up and do it and, change a life, move the needle, and then you got to show up the next day and then show up the next day. But those like big, lofty questions are just, they are hard to reconcile with sometimes.
Yeah.
But the hope, offering a little flutter of hope and seeing people's minds change, and minds change I love that, but like people having self-reflection on how they are then choosing to show up that day because of conversations you've had, because of things they learned, that like it's really profound. So.
And I feel like another kind of misconception is that I see that happening in the homeless community every single day.
Oh,
like people are, I think that there's this idea, because it justifies a dehumanization of somebody, to say like, they're choosing this, or they aren't trying, or they don't want to connect, or they want to live like this, or, we hear those things kind of all the time. Yeah. And what I see every day, and what our team sees every day in the shelter, in the permanent supportive housing, is that people are trying so hard to improve their situation. And the options that they have to do that are so limited. And sometimes, frankly, not healthy for them, or not healthy for the other people that are around them. And so there is this like intense sense of like, I want to try again every day to do something different, to do something better. But it's just like roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. And you do lose hope. Like, if I, in my own situation, had hit 1/10 of the roadblocks that are people who are now meeting the definition of chronically homeless hit on a weekly or monthly basis trying to just get out of their situation, I would have died. I would have died from an overdose, like 100%. And it's like when I tried to do what I needed to do, my own like privilege and access in numerous ways made it possible so that I could do what I needed to do.
Totally.
And it's like that misconception, I think, really helps to paint a picture that folks living outside are the other, you know? And so like I'm really interested when you say like something that you're so proud of with the folks being able to age in place and the preservation of affordable housing. I think that that's so important because people don't connect why that is the same conversation as the encampments.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit more about that? Like, how does the affordable housing team see longer term, like, strategies as being really important?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just give like a few examples of how like these, it's like, wait, how is that connected to homelessness? But when we talk about it, it's like, oh, that's clear. So like a person wanted to buy a parcel of land and develop duplexes for people with disabilities. Just like Joe Schmo, this guy's like, I want to buy that. I want to build duplexes for people with disabilities so they can have stable, secure housing that doesn't skyrocket. They can own homes. But it was contaminated, the soil was, and he's just a guy, and he couldn't access the $200K needed from ecology to clean the site. So then he came to the city and asked me and my team if we would apply for the grant to get the money to clean the site so then he could develop affordable housing on the site. Like, that is not directly cleaning up an encampment, but it is cleaning up a contaminated lot that is underutilized and underused in our community so this person can develop 8 units of home ownership for people with disabilities. And it's like 6 degrees away, but it is a piece of this. It is, this person wants to play. He wants to engage, and I am in no shape to dampen that. You know, if he wants to engage, then I want to lift him up so he can engage and then show someone that it's possible to do this and contribute to the picture, you know, and like, or like Family Support Center, their project, 62 units, you know, it's going to house like 200 people, but still 62 units, took 12 different funding sources.
Yeah.
And all of those have to be managed really diligently. When you see a private funded project, just take out a bank loan. It's like, oh, I need 30 million, develop this, boom, developed. But providers that are looking to provide stable housing for people with forever affordability takes 12 different funding sources and like 46 people with all of their hands in the pot.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of time to manage, but it's the ending of it, you know, is worth it. And we also have a revolving loan program where landlords, can take out an interest-free deferred loan to repair their house that they own and rent. Roof, siding, you know, a heat pump, whatever. They could take out an interest-free deferred loan if they enter into a covenant to rent to a low-income person for a period of time. And so it's like so much administrative work to advertise the loan, to write the loan, to manage that it's affordable. But it's a piece. It's preserving what would be a market rate rent, what could be bought and flipped, and keeping that in the community and having this landlord play. Having them engage to say, this is important, I'm committed to this, and here's what the city has to offer to do that. So it's like 8 units here, a dozen units here, 60 units here. But like when you put them all together, you see these hundreds and hundreds of housing units be added, be contributed to the pot, which like feels much bigger.
Yeah, definitely. So that made me think, can you just talk a little bit about the importance of the private sector, you know, like playing in this, and what are some of the ways that the city supports the private sector in getting involved? Because I think there are also a lot of maybe opinions or feelings that you know, and it is tough to develop a project. I have had that experience now, and there are a lot of things that are really hard about it. But I think that there's sort of this like Olympia, this like old narrative kind of that Olympia is like not willing to work with developers or the private market very well. And so what's your response to that?
Yes, I would say that there is a tone in the development world that the city isn't willing to work with developers. We put all these roadblocks in with permitting or design standards, et cetera. It's really hard to build in Olympia. And then we have a large body of community members that says we are way too friendly to developers. We offer too much support and financial incentives to developers. And the clash of that has been the hardest part of my job these past several months. Trying to, what I'm doing with the Affordable Housing Program Manager is like we are having meeting after meeting with developers all throughout the South Sound to say, come play, this is what we have, be competitive, be curious about what we have to offer. And then like being able to advertise what we do have to offer, but then holding at the same time people feeling really frustrated that we're offering incentives to developers. They already feel that their margin of what they gain off these projects is too big. And we shouldn't be doing that. And those are colliding to a really intense level right now. And just like a picture I like to paint is developing something in Seattle costs the same amount to develop something in Olympia. Like a small more in Seattle, but really relatively it costs the same to develop lumber, labor, Davis-Bacon, all the things. But the rent in Seattle is so much more. So of course, if someone has the option to develop in Seattle or Olympia, they're going to pick Seattle again and again. And so we have this really tough market to compete with because it's the same cost to develop, but much higher rents the north you go. So being able to build relationships with developers and be able to offer this incentive package that is becoming more robust and becoming more supportive, and relying on our relationships to say, no, we'll become more friendly, we'll help streamline the permitting process, we'll look at impact fees, we're looking at what parking needs that are really associated with the project as it's such a huge expense. Like we're trying to learn the needs of developers to positively impact the housing market while we're just in a tough spot due to our location. It's a really, really tough act to balance. Even like the multifamily tax exemption, it comes with a lot of heat on either side of people being supportive or people being not. And I just like to say it is a tool. It is a tool in the affordable housing development toolkit, and we are not in the position to turn any tools away. We're not. Our housing shortage is so profound that any tool that is offered, we have to find a way for it to benefit us, and that's what we're trying to work against.
Well, thank you so much. I guess, you already mentioned that having community members just engaging in conversations around, like more kind of positively framed conversations around like the humanity of people who are sleeping with their heads on the concrete every night, or with sleeping bags that are soaked in water in the woods, and just like trying to remember that, like what that might feel like, and have those kind of more empathetic conversations, infusing empathy into the conversation, as you said. But what other ways or not other ways, but I'm like, when you're sort of like, oh, it would be so cool if, like, what are some of the things that come to mind? Like, oh, it'd be so cool if we, did have more pathways for permitting streamline, or we had more local developers that want, or like I'm just like, when you're like, oh, it'd be so cool if.
Yeah.
What comes to mind?
It feels like right now it's like, because we have such a housing shortage, we have to focus on like, okay, 162 units of these studio 1-bedroom housing. Like, okay, here we go. And we try to churn out these big projects, which that's great. And I see the need, but it would be so cool if we had condos and cottages and like communal living and tenant opportunity to purchase buildings. So it's like, like there's manufactured home parks that are now co-ops that we're seeing pop up throughout the state. So I would be so cool if we were able to be at a place where we are addressing different types of housing depending on people's needs. Because right now we're just really focused on as many units as we can get, biggest bang for our buck, which is fine. Like we need to get there, but it's just to keep that communal space and to allow people to feel invested in the space that they live would feel nice, instead of like, okay, well, in order for me to be housed, I have this one studio option. Housing option, housing choice for people of all income levels would be really cool to see. It'd be really cool to see people experiencing crisis and have a spot to go. That is really tough for, I'm sure Teal talked about it with the crisis response unit. Like we see people experiencing crisis and then we're just kind of like, okay, like, but there's no spot for people to have a moment of reprieve, to just like work through it, or to be in a safe space where they can like, just kind of be. So something like that in our community would be great. Would be great if we had something for people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you would want the community to know? Any upcoming projects or?
There's a lot of housing development projects that are happening, that are in the works, that are cool to see at different income levels.
Is there like a way for people to stay up to date? Like, or what is the best way? Is that through the website, or is there, I know that like Oli PD started like sending out their weekly newsletter and things like that. Is there anything like that for housing and homelessness that people could stay engaged?
I wish our website were better. It's a little scarce, something that we're just trying to get to. So I hope that can be a space where people can access it more. I'm in the process of writing a blog post that goes kind of all the things that we're working on. We had this video series that we worked on. So we're just trying to do better at telling our story. We do post a lot of stuff on the social media, on our social media accounts, about things that we're doing. Oh, we just got awarded this Housing Solutions Lab grant. And there were a ton of applicants. Only 5 cities were chosen. And it's this nationwide grant where these subject matter expertise pertaining to economics and housing are going to come to Olympia and look at all of our commercial buildings to see which ones are about to be up for lease, which ones aren't being used by the state anymore, and like identifying all of our commercial buildings to see how they could be turned into housing. I know.
Love.
I'm so excited because
cool.
We're unique in that way that we have all these state offices and a lot of them are not being occupied. So how we can create some sort of template for developers to be like, okay, these 3 buildings would need this, this, and this, or this building would be way too expensive to convert, or just a way to engage all of our underutilized buildings right now and then potentially turn into housing. So if you're looking for that.
Wow, that's awesome.
Super cool. Yeah.
Do you test time? Do you know your social media handles off the
my gosh, I'm such a hipster. I don't have any social media, so no, I don't know any of them.
Okay.
Probably Olympia, City, yay, or something like that.
They're out there.
Yeah.
It's Instagram.
Yeah.
It's Facebook. Twitter.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. And then we have a blog. So sign on to the blog and then you can read.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
A city blog?
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's good.
I didn't know that.
Yep. Yeah. I'm really grateful for you, Meg, and all that you've done. And I've just, it's cool to hear, I feel like we know each other and we work together really well, but it's cool to hear people in the city be like, oh yeah, Meg, it's like you have become such, a light and a resource of knowledge for people that I work with. And so it's just really cool
Oh, wow.
to be in partnership with you and to be here with you today. It means a lot.
Well, I have been running my mouth for
You sure have.
15 years
Yeah,
now.
you have.
So no, I appreciate that. And I've learned from a lot of amazing people that have come before me. And so I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
For taking the time
Totally.
out of your busy schedule.
You betcha.
Darian, you're awesome. And I hope that everybody will maybe get a little spark from this conversation about how to learn more about what the city's up to. And I can't remember who's next in my docket of, I think it might be Kim Condrat. So the homeless response coordinator for City of Olympia. And so that's going to be kind of that boots on the ground outreach encampment conversation that is part of Darian's team. And then also going to be talking to city planner Stacey Ray, who was part of the One Plan for Olympia. So we'll dive all into that. That was mentioned today, but we'll get some more details on that. So that's next month and then the following month too. So still have quite a bit in this series to go, halfway through, and just really appreciate you.
Absolutely. Anytime.
All right, everybody. See you next time.